Hello, and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. Today's podcast number 2221. The topic is training, and the title is muscle growth determined by mechanical tension or volume? Ooh, this is a fun little one to nerd on out if you'd like to. These kind of questions are interesting because this is going to sound weird, but most people don't need to worry about this. And the reason why is most people are screwing up more important things. So most people need to be more consistent with their nutrition, more consistent with their training in general, whatever the heck their training is, and they'll often get to see much better results. However, if you are consistent with nutrition, if you are consistent with training, and now all of a sudden you're like, okay, how do I perfect my training? Then today's question does relate to what you'd be wanting to perfect. So today's question came from a fellow trainer and podcast listener who reached out and asked the following. I was wondering if you could help me with a friendly debate I'm having with a friend slash powerlifter. He keeps telling me the main driver in hypertrophy is mechanical tension. And I'm telling him it's also time under tension. I think it's more of a blended balance of the two. I give him the example of a bodybuilder compared to a powerlifter. Could you do a podcast on what drives hypertrophy more, mechanical tension versus time under tension? Now, I made that a little more concise and just said the word volume instead of time under tension because I needed the title to be shorter. But it's basically the same thing. So my response to him was, that'd be a fun topic, will do. And as usual, you're right. Research indicates, and 60 plus years of real world examples of people trying to be jacked indicate that you need both. Number one, a weight heavy enough to cause stress to the structural components of muscle tissue. And number two, enough time under that stress that the body believes investing into new muscle tissue in addition to connective tissue and nerve connections is worth the energy investment. One of the things we can do is to look at each element in its extreme. So try to look at one element in as much isolation from the other element as we can. If we look at people who lift heavy things, so high mechanical tension, but they don't lift it for a very large time under tension, one category would be Olympic weightlifters. They are insanely strong. They can lift multiples of their body weight from the floor to up over their head. However, they do it really fast. And their kind of accessory lifts or the auxiliary lifts, the lifts they do other than their main lifts, is relatively low in terms of like overall volume. And they're more so related to positional improvement and or certain parts of the range of motion improvement. They're not typically focused on a singular muscle. Like they're not doing bicep curls to get better at Olympic lifts. Maybe they are, but that's not going to be their top 10 choices for sure. That's somebody just doing it in the corner after the coach yells at them for doing it. But in general, Olympic lifters, they're going to be lifting very heavy things, but for a very low volume. Now, if we look at people who lift weights for a long time, so high volume, but very minimal weight loads, a category for that would be group fitness instructors. So group fitness instructors lift submaximal weights, maybe 5, 10, 15 pounds at most usually, and they're doing multiple 30-minute classes a day. I've trained many group fitness instructors, by the way, so I'm not like talking disparagingly on them. They know this. So they're lifting submaximal weights, but a lot, like throughout the day. And if you look at them, they're not super muscular like a bodybuilder. So the Olympic lifter is usually very lean, but they're also not. There are some Olympic lifters who are well over 20% body fat. They're crazy strong, but they don't really have big muscles, and they can be like high amounts of fat or low amounts of fat. There are times where you would run into somebody who's a very good Olympic lifter, and you almost wouldn't know that they lift because they don't have big shoulders and arms or a big chest. They might have a little bit of a more than normal muscular back, but most of their size is going to be in their thighs and their glutes. So maybe they're kind of filling out their pants very well, but they're not going to have massive shoulders, massive chest, massive arms. So that's that category. So if you look at somebody high mechanical tension, low volume, crazy strong, but not very muscular. They can be, but they also don't have to be. There are many examples where they're not. If you look at a group fitness instructor, minimal weight load, minimal mechanical tension, if any, and really high volume, and they're often not very muscular at all. They might be lean, they might not be lean, but there's you're not going to mistake them for a bodybuilder. Just like an Olympic lifter, you're not going to mistake them for a bodybuilder unless it's, somebody who's maybe like under 80 kilograms and incredibly lean. You then maybe might be like, they do something. I don't know what they do, but they do something. And you can tell. So those are examples of the extremes. People where they might have high mechanical tension but low volume, or high volume and low mechanical tension. If you look at either element in extreme, so one without the other, you don't see the presence of abnormally large muscles. For Olympic lifters, high mechanical tension, very low volume, meaning like time under tension. They do a lot of volume, work, but per bout of effort, there's low time under tension. If you were to reduce their weight load, their mechanical tension a little bit, but still keep it high, and you were to increase their per bout of effort time under tension, what do they turn into? What is that sport? That's powerlifters, where it's still really freaking heavy, but it's more time under tension per lift than an Olympic lifter would do. So that's powerlifting. In powerlifting, what's the difference you see in them versus people who do Olympic lifting? A little more muscle, for sure. There's still going to be some that are lean and some that are not lean, but you're going to see a presence of larger amounts of muscle tissue in powerlifters than you would in Olympic lifters, on average. So give or take a few examples here or there. Now, what do you do if you were to do it from the other side? Is you take a group fitness instructor and you say, okay, I'm going to increase their mechanical tension. I'm going to give them heavier weights to lift. And then probably because of that, they're not going to be able to do as much as volume. So their time under tension per set and total number of sets is going to come down throughout the day. What sport is that? That's bodybuilding. So it's moderate, mechanical tension, and very good time under tension, kind of a moderate time under tension. They're not doing stuff for 2 minutes long, but they're doing it longer than 5 seconds. So they're somewhere in that moderate range. That's bodybuilding. So what do you see the difference between group fitness instructors and bodybuilders? Do you see more muscle? Hell freaking yes. That's why they're called bodybuilders. They have the most amount of muscle. So in both extreme cases, if you bring a little bit of each opposing element into the mix, what do you see is bigger muscles. So this tells us is if you want to build muscle mass, you need a mixture of both mechanical tension and time under tension. And this is similar to the question of what's more important for muscle growth, training or nutrition. Both. So you need both. Either alone from the other really won't help much. So if you train, but you don't consistently enough eat enough, and what is the right amount of food, proportionate wise to calories and protein and whatnot, if you don't have the right nutritional support, so you train, but you don't have the right nutrition, you might see results, you might not see results, it's going to be very minimal, it's going to be haphazard, you're not really going to get the great outcome that you want. Now, if you eat super perfect calories, perfect protein, but you don't train at all, what do you see in that case? It's a very lean human being. They will have as much muscle as they had when they started, because they won't lose any muscle, but they're not going to spontaneously build new muscle. There has to be a stimulus for that. So they're going to be very lean. They're going to have the muscle they already had, but there's not going to be more muscle. So if you do training without nutrition, you don't get bigger muscles. If you do nutrition without training, you don't get bigger muscles. You need to have both. You need both. And this is why the body needs a reason to build the tissue, but then it also needs the material to build the tissue with. A great analogy, simple but it works, is if I want to build a brick house, I have to have bricks, and I have to have somebody to build it. I have to have workers. The bricks is nutrition. The workers are workouts. So if I want a big house, I have to have a lot of bricks. But if I only have one worker, that's going to take freaking forever, or the worker just really can't do it, So if I'm eating perfect, but I don't work out consistently or often enough, I don't really get big muscles. Now, if I only have, 5 to 10 bricks laying around and I have 20 workers, I'm not going to have a house at all. It doesn't matter how many workers I have if I don't have enough bricks. So I can work out all I want, but if I don't have enough proper nutrition support, I'm not going to have bigger muscles. You can't have one without the other. You have to have proper nutrition and the training stimulus to build bigger muscles. So this is the same thing as with mechanical tension and time under tension. So per bout of effort, the time under tension per bout of effort, they need to have a mixture of both. There needs to be sufficient mechanical tension to cause muscle tissue breakdown. So the muscle tissue actually needs to break apart and fracture. And then you have to have the proper time under tension that the body says, hey, you know what? Rather than me just improving my nerve connections, rather than me just improving my connective tissue strength, I need to also reinforce that muscle tissue. I need to repair what broke, but also make it more robust. So this is the response that we would look for, is if I want to build maximal muscle tissue, I need to have a balance of an appropriate mechanical tension load, and then the appropriate time under tension per bout of effort, and then the total number of bouts of effort would be the volume. I need to have that be appropriate as well. So which is more important for muscle? Neither and both at the same time. You're not going to separate these two. They come together. Just like if you want to build muscle tissue, training and nutrition has to come together. You have to have both. So that is the answer. You can't just lift super heavy things for very minimal time under tension and think you're going to get super jacked. You're going to get strong, but you're not going to get jacked. And likewise, you can't, train for hours on end, but with sub-maximal weights and think you're going to get jacked. You're going to become fit. You're going to have good muscular endurance, but you're not going to get good muscular growth. So hopefully that was helpful. Hopefully it answered the question. So to the fellow trainer and podcast listener, you did a great job. I agree with your answer. And so does the entire history of bodybuilding. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions about how to put together proper mechanical tension and time under tension and workout volume, let me know. This is what I do. You can email me at brutalirongym@gmail.com. You can go to our website to check out the different services that we have. So if you'd like to create a personalized, perfect for you training program and nutrition program, that's what I can help you with. Just reach out and let me know. Again, my email is brutalirongym@gmail.com. If you like the podcast, please share the podcast. The more people you share it with, the more people can help. If you like the podcast, you can also consider donating to support the podcast. You can do a donation on the website, or you can go to Nutricost.com to buy your supplements. I've been using their supplements for over 10 years. You can use the code BrutalIron10 for a 10% discount. You can get great supplements at a great discount, and then 10% of whatever you spend gets kicked back to us on a commission. So that's a great way for you to support the podcast if you would like to do so. If you like the information we share in the podcast, you can find more from us on our social media channels. You can find us and follow us on Instagram and YouTube under the name Brutal Iron Gym. As always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.